focus on the positives. It was a brilliant strike. Not too many players in the United team could pull that off.
Gary Neville has come out and said that he was miles off it compared to Cunha and Mbumo.
I agree with you. It's like comparing apples and pears.
Many other players in the Premier League this season that have not hit the ground running, that I don't think are getting anywhere near as much stick.
Pay the fee. That is the one position of the team that United have neglected since Michael Carrick.
That is the one position where you look at Manchester United, you think, oh, they need the person in there. He could start at a World Cup for his country. For me, that is the writing on the wall.
I feel like it might be history repeating in January. Napoli will be there again. There'll be other clubs in Europe. It's
Amorim's key failure at Old Trafford, surely, that he's not been able to get this right with Kobbie Mainoo.
He's got to go. Sorry, he's got to go. I think Man United missed a massive trick in keeping him at Old Trafford.
He's the best player for a decade.
You could
disagree more.
I think that was the real moment in the summer for us to go, right, this is now a rebuild.
It would have sent completely the wrong message in the summer if they cashed in on their captain.
You can't be too attached to these players.
Hello and welcome to Inside Devils, sponsored by talkSPORT Bet. This is your weekly Manchester United show, bringing you everything coming out of Old Trafford. And this wasn't at Old Trafford, but we got a point from Nottingham Forest. Not the result we're all hoping for. I don't want to get into what my prediction was because I think it was about 2-0. But to get into this, to chat a little bit more about it, season in general, we have got talkSPORT's chief football correspondent, the one and only Alex Crook. Good to see you back in the studio, Crookie. Doing all right?
I was in the studio last week, just not for the whole show.
Yeah, you've stopped by.
I might stay till the end this week.
Whistle-stop tour it was, basically.
Keep me interested and I'll stay here.
Yes, boss. And we've got talkSPORT reporter Anil, Kandola. How are you? Good to have you on the show.
Yeah, pleasure. Pleasure as always. Always something to talk about when it comes to Manchester United, isn't it? So we're never too far away from a few controversial topics, but we'll try our best, won't we? So,
yeah. Let's get straight into it then. You know, the game against Nottingham Forest at the City Ground, 2-2 draw, late Amad Diallo wonder strike, absolutely amazing. We remain in the top 8. Who'd have thought Man United are not just in the top half of the table, we're in the top 8. But, Crookie, would you agree that that is a fair point on the road against this new look Nottingham Forest side under Sean Dyche?
Yeah, I'm frustrated by the 2 goals conceded. And by the way that the team switched off
as well
early in the second half. That's a frustration. But I sort of agree with Ruben Amorim, what he said afterwards, that this is a game last year that would have got away from us. And actually we showed character, brilliant equaliser from Amad, who continues to impress going forward. Maybe defensively he needs to improve as one of those wing-backs. Fernandes has hit the post after falling behind. Amad's had one cleared off the line the last minute. So it could easily have been another victory, a fourth successive victory.
Could have won it.
Yeah. So I think there's positives. I'm not too downbeat, and we've taken 13 points out of a possible 15 now, is it? Is that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
13 points out of a possible 15?
Yeah.
That's five games.
Sounds about right to me.
4, 5 out of 7, something like that, isn't it? Yeah.
Either way, it's progress, and if they can back it up with a victory over Tottenham, we should find ourselves in the top 4 heading into this next international break. And coming off the back of the October break, I think we'd all have taken that.
Yeah, 100%. And like you say, the idea of this game last season, I think we would have struggled to have shown the mentality to have got a draw. We'll come back to the Amad stuff because I do think that's an interesting topic because a lot of people have been quite critical, a lot of people have been defending him. But Anil, I just wanted to ask you, does this feel like a break in momentum, or were people getting a little bit overly obsessed with this idea of winning 5 games in a row? If for nothing else, for poor Frank, who can't cut his hair, bless him.
It's 10 points out of 12, by the way. It will be 13 out of 15 when we win at Spurs.
Jump into conclusions, Crookie. Yeah. Look, no, I think it's a great story in terms of this 5 games in a row. You know, it's a lot of interest. It's quite a good bit of banter. I get that. But I think it is putting an element of pressure on Manchester United. Look, if you were to say without this story that they'd go unbeaten in the next 4 games, win 3 of them, you'd take it and you think, okay, right, they have turned a small corner, albeit, you know, as I said, small. But look, you know, it's still a somewhat a positive result, as Crookie's already alluded to before. You know, that is probably a game that Man United would comfortably have lost last season. So I think the fact that they did get a draw, you know, they probably should have won the game given the chances and opportunity. But, you know, a point away to Nottingham Forest, there's not too much embarrassment from that. But yeah, I think this 5 games in a row, it's a bit difficult because look, it's
getting everyone's
yeah,
heads,
and it's not if you win 5 on the bounce, it's an impressive record for
how many
whatever
teams
team.
have actually done that this season apart from Arsenal?
Yeah,
exactly. So it's maybe a little bit of a difficult sort of achievement to receive for the United players. But look, if that's the standard that they've got to go into every week, to try and get 5 in a row, then hopefully if we do 4 out of the unbeaten results anyway, then it should be certainly a better season than what we thought at the start of the campaign anyway.
Yeah, I bet Frank's thinking it should have just been wins and draws.
Yeah,
Why
just
did I
unbeaten, not wins. Unbeaten's fine.
He must be feeling it. You mentioned the Ahmad thing, and I said we'll talk about that a little bit more. He was, of course, at fault for the Morgan Gibbs-White goal, but then scored that amazing equaliser and could have actually won it in stoppage time as well. Amorim said he can be better. Crookie, do you think that that's a little bit harsh? Because I feel like he's getting a lot of stick for the goal, but then some people are saying, how was he supposed to defend it with Morgan Gibbs-White? A few people trying to make out like Morgan Gibbs-White is super tall, like they're a similar height. So I have to give him that. He does need to do better with the defending. But all in all, where do you sit with this?
Well, it's not his natural game. He isn't a defender. So,
Yeah.
This is all alien to him trying to defend crosses into the box and head the ball away. It's just not one of his skill sets. I think he will improve because I think he's quite an intelligent footballer who's going to take on board what the manager and his coaching staff are demanding of him. But going forward, he's back somewhere near his best form now because it was quite a subdued start to the season from Ahmad. He was being played in different positions. Was he a 10? Was he a winger? Was he a wing back? I think even he had a bit of a case of mistaken identity at times. He knows what he is now. Yes, he can improve the defending, but let's focus on the positives. It was a brilliant strike. Not too many players in the United team could pull that off, and unlucky not to win it late on. I'd be more concerned about Diogo Dalot, who is an actual defender.
Worst player on the pitch.
And he continues to make rudimentary errors.
Yeah, I mean, Anil, what do you think? Because surely as an attacking wing-back, he's got to have some help from the defenders, doesn't he? And again, a word on Dalot, because for me, he was the worst player on the pitch, and it's now getting to the point with him where I think he's been an excellent servant, but we have to think, if we're Manchester United and we want to push on and we want to actually be challenging for things, is he the right person for us? I'm not too sure, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, look, quickly in regards to Ahmad, I think that game pretty much summarises his current career and the state of play at Manchester United. Brilliant going forward. He scores a fantastic goal, maybe even the goal of the weekend. But then his defensive work rate, shall we say, or ability or lack of, is going to let him down. But ultimately, that's understandable. Crookie's already said it. He's a forward-thinking player, so for him to completely reverse that and go the other way, it's a very difficult transition for any player to make, no matter how good they are in either box, if you like. In terms of Diogo Dalot, I think it's a fascinating one because, I still remember the comments that Jose Mourinho made when he was at the club saying, look, he's young in terms of Dalot, but this kid could be the best fullback in Europe. So, you look at that, you look at the potential. Yeah, exactly. We all say things that we don't actually want to be on air anymore. But look, them comments are always out there. And at the end of the day, I think it's another victim of the system, not necessarily, anything on Ruben Amorim, but this is a player who is not used to playing right wing back. And again, people might think, well, you're on the right hand side, you're up and down, it might be a bit similar, but it's really not. Your concentration levels have got to change so much because you have to shift from being attack minded to then being in the right position defensively. I think he's almost been caught in the crossfire of the formation change. And look, I think he'll go on to have a very good career, as most Man United players do when they leave Old Trafford. But yeah, I just think he's not necessarily surplus to requirements, but he's not exactly really nailing his name down on the team sheet, is he?
Yeah, no, I agree, and like I said, it's getting to the point now. Do you think that Dorgu needs a bit more of a run, or because I'm not the biggest Dorgu fan, I get a lot of stick in here for hours maybe people thought was a little bit too harsh on him early on, but should he maybe be getting a bit more of a run?
I'm not a massive Dorgu fan either, to be honest. I
think you were giving me stick when I was criticising.
I think he gets himself in some brilliant positions, but you know that he's going to hit the first defender with a cross or he's going to balloon a shot out of place. I think his end product leaves a lot to be desired. I guess if you put maybe his defensive capabilities with what Ahmad can do going forward, you
just combine them and we're good to go.
Back, but you can't do that. I mean, the one they let go is the boy who went to Benfica, was it?
Alvaro Carreras, and he scored a wonder goal for Real Madrid the other day. Now, a couple of years ago, he didn't get a look in at left back. Why did Manchester United not clock the talent that this kid has, that he's now firing on all cylinders at Real Madrid?
Well, look, I think there's a couple of facets to this, and stuff like this does irritate me a little bit because, I look at someone like Mohamed Salah, right? When he was at Chelsea,
De Bruyne as well.
Couldn't do anything. You wouldn't even bat an eyelid at the fact that he's moved on.
Sometimes it is hard.
Exactly, and it just, all sorts of factors go into it. System, manager, responsibilities, requirements on the pitch. And for one reason or the other, he didn't work at Manchester United, and no one could have predicted that the next manager they're going to get is going to be a 3 at the back manager who loves wing backs. That's where all of the play is going to come from. If we did, then of course he'd still be at the club, but you can't predict the future, and ultimately his path almost certainly probably wouldn't have gone the way it has if he stayed at Manchester United, being a bit part player. And then you factor in, if, for example, if he was still at the club and then Dorgu was signed, what would that then do for his career? He certainly wouldn't be on Real Madrid's radar, would he? So I think it's easy to get frustrated about these types of things when you see someone who used to be on the books at Manchester United then go on to do some really incredible things. But look, it's the classic saying is that you can't cry over spilt milk. Look, the situation's over with now, so best of luck to him at Real Madrid. But let's just try and focus on getting Dorgu a little bit more up to speed than looking at your old ex-girlfriends and whatnot. So yeah, we'll have to park that one.
Well, somebody who is not our old ex-girlfriend is our current, wife for life, whatever you want to call him, Benjamin Šeško. Now, I was not that mad with the Forest performance. Gary Neville has come out and said that he was miles off it compared to Cunha and Mbeumo. Personally, for me, I think it's a little bit unfair to compare because you are looking at two players who were already well established within the Premier League. And I think I think we talk about it a lot, don't we? There's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration with moving to another country, language, etc., playing in the Premier League, which, whether you like it or not, is a huge step up. Has Neville gone a bit far there?
Not for the first time.
No.
Surprise.
I agree with you. It's like comparing apples and pears. You can't.
What, 10 games in?
Yeah, and as you say, the reason they signed Cunha and Mbeumo is because they were ready-made for Premier League football. There wasn't really a striker out there who fitted into that particular bracket unless you were going to pay for Alexander Isak, and that's not worked out particularly well at the moment either. But I think it's quite similar, really. Gyökeres and Šeško both coming in, both trying to find their feet in a new league that is more physically and probably more mentally demanding than what they've been used to. So it is going to take time. I'm not overly concerned at this moment. I still think Benjamin Šeško is going to go on and be a better player than Rasmus Højlund was.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, look, it really does irritate me again, but that sounded so grumpy. But when people like Gary Neville, who have obviously got such a powerful influence in this sphere, especially when it comes to Manchester United, they're on a good vein of form. And look, I've been very public in terms of what I think about Ruben Amorim. That doesn't change in my head over 4 games. But there is something to be positive about. And for him to just single out an individual, as Crookie's already said, that's still finding his feet. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what striker Man United would have signed. If they were from abroad, it's a fact they're going to have to take a bit of time unless they're on an Erling Haaland level of ability. So, the hold-up play, allowing others to come into the game, when you've got players like Mbeumo and Cunha, if, let's say, for instance, Šeško was signed last season, then I think it would be a real issue because you'd look at him as the only real source of goals. But he wasn't just signed for his source of goals. You don't sign a 6'7" or whatever he is striker just because he's good at scoring goals. It's his hold-up play. It's his ability to bring others into play. So look, I think there have been little moments, especially as I've already said, with that hold-up play that Højlund struggled with, to keep the ball, keep the defender off him, and then get his head up to bring others into play as well. So look, I'm exactly in agreement there as well with what we've all pretty much said. It's a bit early. He's not doing badly, and certainly not bad enough for someone like Gary Neville to dig him out.
And I also think, and we've probably said this before, but there are many, many other players in the Premier League this season that have not hit the ground running, that I don't think are getting anywhere near as much stick. And maybe that just comes with, what is it we always say, hated, adored, never ignored.
Exactly,
maybe that's just part of it. And we understand that, wearing the Man United shirt is heavier than most, but I do think people need to take a beat there. Now, somebody who I wanted to get your thoughts on, who I hope will be wearing a Manchester United shirt soon, Elliot Anderson. We talked about the Brighton game, Belieber, bless him, it was not the best audition. I think Elliot Anderson was the complete opposite. I thought that he was absolutely sensational. We touched on this a little bit last week. You might have, left by that point. I'm not too sure. But I wanted to get your thoughts, both of you, A, on the performance, and also this conversation about him being a £100 million plus player. For me, I really do believe that if this vein of form continues, if he's at the World Cup and he's takes England on an amazing journey to a semi-final, to a final, I'm not going to say, England win it with him, but, is he worth that kind of money? Is that just the world that we live in now, that there are players that are over £100 million and he actually could fulfil that and actually be worth that price tag?
Well, first and foremost, he will be at the World Cup, and he will be starting for England, barring any dramatic slump in form or injury, because he's so important for Declan Rice. Very similar to what Zubimendi does at Arsenal.
Another £1 million player.
Yeah, exactly. But just by being there, both Zubimendi and Anderson free Rice up to really impose himself at the top end of the pitch, which is not something we've always seen from him. I know our own Stuart Pearce, when he was coaching, Declan Rice felt he had that capability, and we're seeing it now. But in answer to your question, it goes back to the striker debate, really. I remember speaking to someone very senior at another Premier League club when United paid that money for Šeško, and I said, look, is this guy worth what's being paid? And he said, well, that is the going rate for a centre forward. Look at Gyökeres, look at Ugo Ekitike, who again was unproven, and you've got to say has come in and did hit the ground running at Liverpool, and obviously Šeško's in that bracket as well. And it's the same for midfielders. Declan Rice, 105 million, looks a bargain to me. Moises Caicedo, 115 million. I think if Adam Wharton goes, providing he can stop getting injured, which is happening quite a lot, he's going to be a £100 million player. And I think Elliot Anderson will be as well, particularly if he does take the World Cup by storm. So I've never been over fussed by transfer fees.
No.
It's not coming out of your wallet, is it, Crook?
Well,
no.
You could afford it, by the way. You could afford an Adam Wharton, couldn't you?
But could you not chip in a bit?
But pay the fee, because that is a position I sound like a broken record, because I've been talking about this literally for years. That is the one position of the team that United have neglected since Michael Carrick, that midfield role. And it's so important in modern football. Name me a team in Europe, not just the Premier League, that are winning games week in, week out without a top-class midfielder. We're lacking behind.
Yeah, exactly. And the importance of a midfield signing for Manchester United in particular is perfect the example of Michael Carrick. I think the season before they signed him, they finished so far behind. They made that one signing, everyone, I remember saying, that's not going to be enough. You've just signed an English midfielder, and then they win the next season by a canter. So it just highlights the importance of that midfield, as you've already said there, Crookie, that despite them trying all sorts with the McFred era and all that kind of stuff over the years, the good old days, we didn't know what we had, did we? But they've tried so much. But you're right, that is the one position where you look at Manchester United, you think, they really need not just a player or a body in there, they need the person in
Someone
there.
who's going to dominate games.
Yeah, exactly.
And Anderson's got the ability to do that.
And also in terms of the price tag, look, I'm the same. That's just the nature of the beast at the moment in terms of the price tag in football. But you add in two factors when it comes to not just a midfield signing. The fact that he's English, that will always add a little bit more money, and then you add the Man United tax. So you could probably add another 30-40 million onto that when it should probably be about 70 million odd. But as I've said, when you factor in all of the different facets to an individual like this, he's got age on his side. He looks like he's so calm under pressure, and that's everything that Man United are missing in the heart of midfield, isn't it? So yeah, that'd be incredible.
Well, talking about our midfield, one player that we've been discussing a lot is, of course, Kobbie Mainoo. Now, I was booked and busy last night. I was filling in for Alex Crook because this
big
is
shoes those to fill. Big shoes.
Huge shoes.
Did you fill it in a bar tab?
No, because I was being a little bit more professional than you, and I only had one drink until I'd finished working. Thank you very much.
Very impressive.
But yes, I was at the Northwest Football Awards on the green carpet. Did it have a green carpet when you went?
Maybe.
Yeah, it was a
Can't remember, can
carpet.
you? It must have been a good event, Crookie.
Just about remembers getting home, don't you? Well, no, it was actually at the Manchester Deansgate Hotel, which is where we were at the Soccer Aid after party.
Is that the one I got you into?
No, you didn't. This is a conversation for another day because Alex Crook claims that he got us all in. He left us. You know, like if you're at the queue going into a club or something, and then your mate gets VIP and they just jump ahead. But oh, did you not get in? Sorry, that was the vibe. But nevertheless, we had great memories that night. We got pictures with Nemanja Vidic, Edwin van der Sar, Michael Carrick. The picture you took of me was horrible, but the one I took of you was great. We had a great time. So it was good memories to be back there. And I caught up with the one and only Brian Robson, and we spoke about a few things, but listen to what he's had to say about Kobbie Mainoo because he wants to see him playing more.
I'd like to see Mainoo get a little bit more of game time because I think he's a really talented player, but he needs games, and otherwise you've got a player who's coming through the ranks who could be your answer.
And would be very important for England as well when you think about it.
I mean, last year he got like a few injuries, didn't get into top form. But the year before, the last 6 months of the season, he was outstanding. So you've just got to get that confidence back into him, get the fitness back into him, and I think he could be a really good player.
Crookie, we need to be seeing him more. That's what we've all been saying, isn't it?
Listen, I'm the most paid up member of the Kobbie Mainoo fan club there is. I spent the whole of the Euros telling anyone who would listen that Kobbie Mainoo was the solution to England's midfield problem, and so it transpired because he comes into the team and ends up staying there all the way through until that final defeat to Spain. You listen to Brian Robson there, he's someone who knows about the fabric and the tradition of Manchester United, the importance on youth players coming into the team. He was there when the class of 96 burst onto the scene and helped guide people like Paul Scholes and Gary Neville and David Beckham to having the careers that they have had. And I think Kobbie has still got that potential. You know, we've been talking about problems in midfield. I think he's got the full package. Yes, there are facets to his game that he can work on, but you can't do that on the training pitch. The only way you can really do that is by playing more regularly. I think the fact United are already out the League Cup and no European football has been a big negative for Kobbie because he would certainly have got game time in those competitions. But at some point, I would still like to see Ruben Amorim put faith in him in midfield because I think it would be a real shame if this talent goes to waste.
And you mentioned there Ruben Amorim, which is a really, really annoying thing for me because he came out at the start of the season and he said that, look, Kobbie, great player, etc., etc., but he is fighting for his position with Bruno Fernandes. I think that's...
How can you fight with the captain?
Exactly. Yeah. Mr. Undroppable, not just at Man United, but in the Premier League, right?
The guy who's he's not played for he's not been available for 2 games because of injury as well.
Exactly. And you actually break it down and you look into it and, I might have got this mistaken, but he said by that logic that Mainoo is going to be playing for Fernandes' position. But unless my memory has served me incorrectly, the only time this season that Kobbie's played and Fernandes hasn't was the first half against Grimsby. Yeah. Every other time that Kobbie's got any minutes, Bruno's on the pitch. So what was his thought process from saying that in the first place? Was he just simply lying? Was he just essentially admitting that he doesn't really have an idea of what he's going to do because he understands that this academy record that Man United have got constantly and consistently naming someone from the academy in the squad. He doesn't want to be the one to break that. So he knows he has to keep Kobbie on side in some aspect. But the fact that he said that he's fighting with the most undroppable player in the Premier League, for me, that is the writing on the wall because... And I think it is a bit of a downfall in Ruben Amorim. If you can't get the best out of a player...
Do you think that's it, that he doesn't know how to get the best out of him, if we're being completely honest?
I think he does, but he also realises that he'll have to drop Bruno Fernandes, and he's not going to do that. So, it's either you make the decision of saying, look, Kobbie, you may have to leave... in order to get minutes, because at the end of the day, this isn't just a normal season. You factor in the stuff you were saying there, Crookie, about the lack of games and opportunity to really burst into that starting 11, and then also the fact there's a World Cup at the end of the season, so he needs to play. And at the end of the day, I understand it. I love him. I'm the exact same. I would love to see him not just be in the midfield, but one day be United's captain. He gets it. He understands what it means to play for that club. But if he's not playing, what do you expect a player of that talent to do? Just rot away on the bench? I'm sorry, but for the benefit of the young boy's career, he could start at a World Cup for his country. This isn't playing against Grimsby away in the League Cup. This is the big league. So I just think there's only one solution this is going to be, is him going to leave, because Bruno Fernandes, unless he's sold, is not going to be dropped from that starting 11.
Crookie, as our in-house transfer guru, talk about this move to Napoli. Is there anything concrete in an actual departure, or is it too soon to tell?
Well, the interest from Napoli was there in the summer, and he was desperate to get out. I think I can say that with some certainty, but United very quickly closed the door on any kind of exit. And I feel like it might be history repeating in January. Napoli will be there again. There'll be other clubs in Europe. Crystal Palace got a mention to me the other day. Newcastle, I know I've got long-term admiration for Kobbie Mainoo as well, and maybe would like to reinforce their squad. But I don't think United are in a hurry to let him get out the door. And what you've got there is a frustrated player who's kicking his heels and no doubt becoming more and more unhappy by the week. Didn't even get off the bench against Forest at the weekend. So it's a real conundrum. But unless they can source a replacement, I think the squad is too threadbare for them to even entertain the idea of him going out.
So do you think that's the only reason why they're not going to let him go is because just essentially bodies and numbers in the squad?
Yeah, no, I think the point you make about always having an academy graduate on the bench is pertinent as well, because there's not tons of them, is there?
No.
So Kobbie is important in that respect, because you're right. Ruben Amorim, he's set a few unwanted records already. He certainly won't want that on his CV.
Who would have thought that Kobbie would be a token selection in the squad a couple of years ago?
This is the wild thing, and you look at the player that we were talking about earlier. Someone like Carreras, who is his potential. And like you say, Anil, there are different things that goes on with this, but this is a player that we had whose potential wasn't completely unlocked. With Kobbie, is he going to end up in a similar situation here, maybe, where he isn't used in the right way at Manchester United, and he goes off somewhere and is a superstar?
Yeah, well, I think it was last season in a game in the Europa League where he played a little bit further forward, didn't he? And then Amorim came out and said, right, this is what he's really good at, isn't it? Going forward, making things happen, being in and around the box. And then, he's in competition with Bruno Fernandes, who's been dropped deeper. So again, where's the logic behind that? And I don't want this to seem like it's just an excuse to bash Amorim. At the end of the day, this is not just any player. This is not just, an individual that's come through the academy or, a £30 million signing. This was the individual that we looked at after that FA Cup final, which he got man of the match in, by the way, as we're okay. This Michael Carrick conundrum over the years has finally been solved, and we haven't spent a penny doing it. He's naturally found his calling, essentially. But, the way that things can change so quickly in football, it's scary. And like I said, there's so many different factors that are going to put pressure on Kobbie to want minutes. And like you said, one game a week now until the new year. Where's that opportunity going to come for him to show that he is good enough?
Yeah, but I mean, this for me, it's Amorim's key failure at Old Trafford, surely, that he's not been able to get this right with Kobbie Mainoo.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just quickly, Crook. I think the situation with Garnacho, I think we're all in unison that he had to be sold eventually.
That's an attitude problem,
exactly.
Yeah.
You think, right, okay, you did have potential, you did have something there, raw talent, but your attitude...
let your brother run wild on Instagram,
exactly.
and yeah.
Exactly, so we can understand why you've let that go. But Kobbie, come on, you can't surely put him in the same category as Garnacho because he just wants to play football. This is a kid who's hungry. I can't believe they're not utilising him.
No, I think you're right when you say, it's a big failure on the manager, and credit to Kobbie, because obviously there's a few academy graduates who've gone out the door. Rashford pulling up trees at Barcelona, Garnacho not pulling up trees at Chelsea, but in both cases you can understand why Ruben Amorim wanted to get rid of them. We can't fathom why he doesn't have any trust in Kobbie Mainoo, and unlike the other two, he's not causing any problems, is he? There's no histrionics. He's not come out publicly and asked to leave, even though we know that he all wants to. He hasn't sulked when he has had his opportunity. He's not always been able to seize it, because I think he's suffering from the fact he knows the manager doesn't really trust him, doesn't have confidence in his ability. It's a really sad situation. It will be less talked about the more successful United are, but if we start losing games again, it will be definitely a stick to beat the manager with.
Yeah. Could you potentially see a situation where they're saying to him, look, just hold fire, maybe teams will revisit the interest in Bruno Fernandes?
Stock's going to drop.
Exactly, but maybe do they have so much faith in him they're saying, look, be patient, you can take the reins over Bruno Fernandes? Or is it as simple as...
You'd like to think so.
Yeah.
You would like to think those conversations.
But again, how important is it to keep Bruno Fernandes?
He's got to go. Sorry, he's got to go. I think Man United missed a massive trick in keeping him at Old Trafford. £100 million, that does give you the rebuild that you want. That's not even to consider the price tags of a
best player for a decade.
Yeah, of course he has, in the worst performing Manchester United team in a decade as well. So
you could disagree more with you.
Thanks, Crook. You said you agree with that, cheers, mate. We'll cut that disagreement out. But no, look, I think he's a good player. Of course, he's a great player. But the fact that he is consistently being shoehorned into the team at the detriment of the other players that you've got at the club. You know, if he's
Listen,
such an
I love Kobbie Mainoo, but I'm not convinced that he could have come up with that assist at Anfield to win the game.
And maybe not. But
2
then,
goals to assist
yeah,
in the
of
Premier
course,
League.
of course. The stats there speak for Bruno Fernandes. But the way I see it is, if he is such an incredible player in that 10 role, why is he being asked to be dropped deeper on the pitch? I mean, why is he being asked to be shoehorned? And some people might say, you know, well, it shows how versatile he is. Well, if he's your best player, you don't put him in different positions. You want to get the best out of him. I just look at it and I think at the age that he was at, the money that Man United were being offered, it's just I think that was the real moment in the summer for us to go, right, this is now a rebuild. This is the moment where we're going to rip everything out, because that's what every Man United fan was crying out for. But when the moment and the opportunity comes, they didn't want to have it because they were scared to lose someone. You can't be too attached to these players, because essentially that's been the downfall of Manchester United fans over the last decade.
Can't be too attached to your captain, Crook.
I mean, we've had this debate, you know, numerous times over, and I was having it with Steve Bruce a week or so ago, and actually he's quite a big fan of Bruno Fernandes, and I think we both agreed that if he was in a better team, if he had better players around him, then he would be more appreciated, not just by United fans maybe, but by fans of other teams. I think he's a phenomenal player. It would have sent completely the wrong message in the summer if they cashed in on their captain. That would have been a disaster PR-wise for Sir Jim Ratcliffe. I think you've got to find a way maybe to utilise all of these players. You know, I know we're not playing as many games as historically Manchester United are used to, but Bruno doesn't have to play every minute, nor does Matheus Cunha, nor does Bryan Mbeumo. So let's find a way to rotate and get players on the pitch, but let's not cash in on Bruno Fernandes.
But you feel like he should have been gone in the summer, and if it comes around again to this summer coming up, you want him out.
Yeah, I think, you know, this situation was a very unique one.
It's down to the rebuild. It's not because you don't think he's a good captain or a good player.
He's a great player, a great captain. I'm not quite sure. There's been a few instances since he's been at the club where I'm thinking that's not quite the way I'd want my Manchester United captain to conduct himself. We've already done that already so many times before. But I just look at it and I think to myself, you want this rebuild. You know that the midfield has been such an issue, as we've already even said on this show. Who is the only player who's been the mainstay, the common denominator in the midfield? The only one who hasn't changed. But the only one who hasn't been changed, the only one who hasn't even been rotated out of the squad is Bruno Fernandes.
I'm not saying he should be undroppable, and there have been games where I've been tearing my hair out saying, come on, you've got to get Bruno off and get control of this midfield. So maybe Ruben Amorim needs to manage the situation better. But I'm not advocating flogging him. I tell you what, if he does go, it won't be to Saudi Arabia. It'll be somewhere like Bayern Munich. And then you'll see him go and play for one of the biggest clubs in Europe and tear it up.
And maybe so, but we also seen Vincent Kompany get relegated from the Premier League, and now he's all of a sudden the best manager in Bayern Munich's history. So, you know, it's chalk and cheese a little bit when you're comparing the German league to the Premier League, with all due respect.
That Harry Kane's rubbish.
Well, he did it in both, actually. So, but look, I think at the end of the day...
Bruno's not done it in the Premier League, apparently.
No, of course he has. But I just look at it and I think to myself, look, there's been so many changing facets. You've had Casemiro in there, you've had McTominay, you've had Fred, you've had all of these players that have been tried to accommodate Bruno Fernandes. Well, why don't we accommodate the team and think about
You're telling me Bruno was the issue and not Fred?
What I'm saying is, okay, if it was Fred, then was it McTominay as well? Yes, okay,
probably,
then
yeah.
was it Kobbie as well?
I'll use your own argument against you. McTominay's gone to an inferior league and been nominated for a Ballon d'Or.
Yeah, but what
doesn't mean we should have kept him.
No, of course not, and I'm not saying for one second that they should have kept him, but you've had so many players that have been so different in terms of what they contribute to the team, and it hasn't worked. You can't tell me that all of these players are rubbish. Look at the disrespect of Casemiro. I hope we get a chance to talk about him, by the way. Look at the way that people are talking about this player, one of the greatest midfielders of our generation, because he can't cover the lacking of Bruno Fernandes' position because he wants to roam around everywhere. It's a team game, and you can't just have someone who's roaming around doing whatever he wants, especially when you factor in the situation with Man United bringing in two players who are playing in the preferred position of Bruno Fernandes. So clearly he can't be that irreplaceable if they've already signed Cunha and Mbeumo as well. I don't know. I know I'm in the minority with this, but I just think if you want to rebuild, have one. If you don't claim you do.
There you go, mic drop. You've said what you have to say.
You've not given us your opinion. Are you in the Anil camp?
It's 1-1, so you do get the say.
You know what?
Have you got more intelligence?
Careful, you want Crookie on side more than me.
Right. So I think for me, I understand where you're coming from, Anil, and I think before the season started, when there were the reports of him potentially moving, I think if he'd have wanted the move and had it have happened, I think it would have been sad, but I would have been okay with it looking at the bigger picture of the amount of money that it would bring in. I think with Bruno Fernandes, he's not going to be the future of Manchester United just because of the age thing. However, for me, it's a hard one because he has pulled us out of so many dark moments. He has been, for me, I like him as a captain, and I just feel that he has to stay. And I think that it was the right decision. I understand what you're saying about the rebuild, but I think that there's other dead wood that could be cleared. I don't view Bruno Fernandes as the dead wood. As much as you wouldn't get the kind of money that you're talking about, I think that as much as we all love Casemiro and he's had an amazing resurgence, he's on far too much money. He's on far too much money. And again, isn't necessarily going to be the future, because as much as his footballing brain is there, his legs are starting to go. The football's not left him, but his legs are starting to go.
There's been games he's played in. I remember Liverpool at Old Trafford a couple of seasons ago where he had to be taken off to put out of his misery, Casemiro. Let's not rewrite history with this fella.
But if you want to talk about games at Anfield, we all know what Bruno Fernandes did when they were getting smashed.
This wasn't at Anfield, this was at Old Trafford,
But and I think, look, in regards to summarising this conversation, I think we should introduce a new rule in football. Any player that finishes 16th and is offered 100 million for, we should sell them. How on earth are we going to say that Bruno Fernandes is worth more to Manchester United when they finished so low in the Premier League? You can't for 1 second say that he's worth more than £100 million when they were languishing in nearly the relegation spots.
But he's going to be worth more now, so it could actually end up coming round and working out better for you. Because if he does go, let's say that he has another season or two where he helps Manchester United get to the point that they need to be, to maybe start looking at moving on from him. If Man United are competing in the top 6 or more or whatever, or competing in Europe, he could end up even going for more money. I guess you never know.
I hope so. But, you look at a midfield of potentially Wharton and Kobbie, and then you have Mbeumo and Cunha. I don't think I'm going to miss Bruno Fernandes in that regard.
I just think that there are other people that you can shift.
Not for that money, though. If you want to rebuild, you need the money.
I think getting somebody like Casemiro off the books and the amount of money that he is on, somebody like him, you've got somebody maybe like a Harry Maguire as well, who's on, although fair enough, if they give him a contract extension, I guess that's a little bit different. But I don't know, I just feel like there's still a little bit more dead wood that could be cleared, because also you've got to think a couple of our players we've not got rid of, they're on loan. Yeah, no,
definitely, 100%. Don't get me wrong, in terms of shifting these players, Bruno Fernandes isn't at the top of the charts, but then you look at, if you were to concentrate on shifting all of the other players, that might take a year, that might take 2 years, and then what's Bruno Fernandes going to be worth then? So it's all about the timing, and I get that. I just think, look,
he's ruthless.
You want it. If you want the rebuilds, have it. If you don't,
I didn't see it going down that particular road today.
You know what? I always get stick for being quite ruthless, and my famous phrase, cut the cord, and all that, but you are coming in and stealing my crown. I just wanted to quickly switch gears. And just put that on ice, because Saturday saw our 10th game of the league campaign. We're in 8th place, but only 2 points off second. We were in second at one point during that game. Yes.
What a time! What a time!
You've got to think about it. 10 matches, 17 points, 5 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws. We would have taken this coming into this season when we were talking in the summer. For 10 games in, Manchester United to be in 8th position. We've got to take the positives from that, surely.
And the 3 losses are Arsenal at home, when we deserved the point. City away, which wasn't a great performance, but there were still moments in that game. Brentford, probably the worst result we've had in the Premier League. So I think that's all right. And you look at the league table, if you take away Arsenal at one end and Wolves at the other, it's very concertina, isn't it? I think it's 3 points between second and Villa, who are in 11th. So this Tottenham game's big. Because I think psychologically, if you can get yourself up into the top 4, going into the November break, going into what's always an important festive period, I think suddenly the second half of the season looks a lot brighter.
And considering teams like Liverpool, like Man City, like Chelsea have all lost as many games as United now, if more.
It's going to be that kind of season.
Yeah. I agree. Was United's rocky start just a reflection of how chaotic this Premier League is in general? Because I understand that people were frustrated. I understand when certain people had meltdowns and certain people weren't too happy. Mentioning no names, Alex, Crook and Flex. But I understand that, because there have been times when the performances have not been good enough. But all in all, when you think about how some of the best teams, you look at Liverpool going into this season, they've spent so much money, they're so amazing, they're going to take this league and absolutely run with it. Teams with better squads than ours, everyone's been chaotic. So do we need to give Man United and Ruben Amorim a little bit of grace here?
No.
No?
No, I think that the whole premise of his excuses, shall we call them, of last season of how bad it was, look, we're still in the storm. We're still in the storm.
But there's been improvements.
And of course there has. But the touching sentiment at Old Trafford of, the storm has gone now and good times are coming, the sun is in the sky and all that garbage. Okay, great. You've had your pre-season, you've got signings in through the door that fit your system. We need to see an instant impact. And I get it, given the chaotic nature of the Premier League this season, Man United are more than within having a good season at the end of the campaign. But it's the way you look at things, right? They're two points off second, but I think, like you've already said, Crookie, they're 2 points off 11th as well. So it's how you look at things in the perspective. And the one reason why maybe I'm being a little bit more critical of Ruben Amorim than the likes of all the other clubs that are dropping points or having difficult moments, they're all in Europe. They've got so much.
Yeah, that does make a difference.
They've got so much to concentrate on, and that's not an excuse. But
does that? We talk about having Europe making things more difficult because you've got more games, but sometimes does more games help?
Yeah, it does.
It's a balance,
in terms
isn't
of,
it? Yeah.
We've been talking about Kobbie Mainoo, and obviously people like Joshua Zirkzee, who's going to be frustrated about a lack of minutes. But I think overall, what I'm hoping anyway is that when we get into the business end of the season, and I'm expecting, maybe with the exception of Spurs, all of those Champions League teams to go quite deep. It was the same in the Europa League and the Conference League. That United can really feel the physical benefits that when those teams are playing high octane games as well. Arsenal aren't going to be playing Slavia Prague when we get to the knockout stage of the Champions League. That's going to work in United's favour.
We talk about cup finals. We were in one a few months ago that was very, very painful, but we have the possibility.
Revenge.
Revenge, yes, Crookie, revenge, because we're back in action early on Saturday. We're facing a repeat of that Europa League final, Tottenham Hotspur, away, 12:30pm. It's live and exclusively on talkSPORT. Anil, are you expecting an easier or harder outing than at the City Ground? Because United are seeming to execute their game plan better against opposition who like to keep possession of the ball a bit more.
Absolutely, and you consider the fact that Tottenham are absolutely terrible at this moment in time, particularly at home as well.
At home, it's shambolic.
It's really bad, even by the metric of the lack of consistency in the Premier League at the moment. Their home record has got to be at the top of Thomas Frank's list in terms of what he needs to address. Look, this is a massive game. I think I said this about the Brighton game after Liverpool. In my eyes, the Brighton game was bigger than the Liverpool game because Man United over the years have had them big moments, them big results where you think, where on earth has that come from? But the problem's been the following week when they lose against whoever and you think, okay, well, maybe that was just a flash in the pan. They got themselves up for a big game and then back to square one. This game now, as you've already alluded to there, Angelina, the fact that Tottenham are the reason why Man United don't have many games. Tottenham are the reason why Kobbie isn't
caused all these
exactly,
issues.
and when you think about the fact that Tottenham was synonymous with not winning any trophies, again, there's a lot of revenge.
We
I know
let
you're saying it
everyone down with
tongue-in-cheek.
that final. We didn't only let ourselves down, but we did let the footballing
Probably
community
the
down,
footballing
giving them
nation.
a trophy. Yeah.
Whenever a Tottenham fan tries to wind me up about it, I always come back with the same retort. It was a dog and duck against the Red Lion. And the Red Lion just about won. Honestly, it was atrocious. But it wasn't just that game, was it? 4 times Tottenham beat us last season.
They don't have a good record at all against Spurs, do they?
I think this is a big mental hurdle to
Huge.
get over this. Like you say, last win against Spurs was October 2022.
Wow.
Fred was on the score sheet.
Oh, there you go, Cookie.
So
My point proven.
My mate.
but I do think it is a massive mental, a mental hurdle to overcome, and I think that it would be such a statement win in that sense to just kind of silence all of that noise around Spurs. But Crookie, I wanted to ask you a little bit about Thomas Frank because he was heavily linked with the United job over a year ago when Ten Hag was sacked. We went with Ruben Amorim instead. With everything that's happened over the last 12 months at Old Trafford and how Frank's life at Spurs has started, are you happy that the board made the right decision?
I'm a massive fan of Thomas Frank. I think he's a terrific coach. I think he's a terrific human being. And I think Tottenham fans need to have a bit of a reality check because going into the weekend game against Chelsea, they were 3rd in the table. What's to complain about? They didn't like it when Ange Postecoglou was playing too open and they were getting beat every week. They don't like this fella because he's not playing the Tottenham way.
Whatever that
What is the Tottenham way?
Tottenham way in my lifetime has been losing games and not winning trophies, by the way. He hasn't got the tools at his disposal. He hasn't got a forward worthy of the name. So he's got to believe that defence is the best form of attack for Tottenham because that is the strongest part of their team. I think he's still trying to work out his best midfield combination. But listen, I'm all for it, Spurs fans. Turn up, be moody, get agitated, create a toxic atmosphere, and that'll play into United's hands. But honestly, I think he's a top guy and a top coach.
Yeah, I think he's a phenomenal coach. I think my only reservation a little bit is, the jump from Brentford to Tottenham's big, but the jump from Brentford to Man United is on another planet. So I think, for his sake anyway, the fact that he wasn't selected as the new man at Manchester United was probably beneficial for him as well. But yeah, this game, I can't stress enough how big it is. You factor in all of the recent history with Tottenham, and then you think, Ruben Amorim, the fact that this guy didn't even win 2 games in a row, has the chance to go unbeaten in 5, which again, I 100% I get it. For Manchester United, this should be the norm. They should be going unbeaten in 5, probably 4 or 5 times in the season. But this is a really big moment for Ruben Amorim. Was that just a flash in the pan with the 3 wins in a row? Or is this now a consistent period where Man United are simply too hard to beat at given
And it's
moment?
important because you look into the context of what's to come after the international break. They've got Everton at home on the Monday night in the first game back. They've got West Ham and Wolves. That's 3 of their first 4 games after this international break. Bournemouth at home, good side Bournemouth, but Man City showed at the weekend that they're gettable.
Frank, don't get too excited about this run of fixtures.
Don't listen to this bit.
They play Wolves twice in December, so there's an opportunity after this Spurs game to put points on the board.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what you guys are saying. I think that it would be massive. And one thing I must say, these Spurs fans that are losing their heads, and like you say, life could be worse. And also the players, Jed Spence, Mickey Van Ven storming down the tunnel after the Chelsea game. One thing I will say, Manchester United players have always gone to the fans at full time. I understand the fans were giving them stick, but you go to your fans and you applaud, whether you like it or not. So that, for me, I think
they deserve the loss for that.
Yeah,
don't they?
they deserve.
Yeah.
They
More of the
deserve
same
the
this
loss.
weekend.
Yeah, let's hope for several more strops.
Bit
now,
more needle.
Predictions. I was on a really good run, and then I messed it up last weekend. But Anil,
What did you say last weekend?
I think I said 2-0. I was like, I believe in the defence and I believe in the goalkeeper.
Yeah.
It was shambolic.
Well, you were nearly right for a bit of the game.
For a little bit. Yeah.
I think it'll be a draw.
Draw.
Yeah,
what are you going with?
I think it'll be 1-1. I think it'll be cagey. I think Tottenham, their lack of goals anyway at their home stadium will play a part. And this is why I think it is such a big game, because this game is won by Manchester United if their mentality is right. If they don't get too caught up in all the things that we've said about Tottenham's home record, the fact they lost to them in the Europa League, the fact that they're the reasons why they're only playing 1 game a week. If they can just put all that to one side, no, there's just a simple job to be done in 90 minutes, they can get the win. But we saw in that Forest game, just in that couple of minutes, there's still a bit of a soft underbelly. So if they can address that, I think they get it. But my concern is still a little bit that really high pressure games like this mentally could be their downfall a little bit. But I don't think Tottenham are good enough to take advantage of that, so I'm going 1-1.
Crook.
2-1 United. I agree it's going to be quite cagey. Spurs don't seem to have the capacity to really blow teams away in terms of firepower. I think United will win 2-1.
Yeah, I'm going to go...
Pressure on you this week, Angelina.
I know. I think I don't normally copy, but I do think I am going to go 2-1. I like to be my own woman and do something different, but I am going to agree with Crookie. I think that 2-1 would be nice. I'd really like to see Šeško get a goal, just to kind of silence the critics. But yeah, I think that we've got enough to get a win. If it is a draw, it is. But I just can't see with their home form being so bad. We've got to win this one.
I seem to remember Brian Mbeumo, and I've not got the stats, but just from memory, he's got quite a good record.
Yeah, he does.
Brentford against
Hat
Spurs.
trick for him then.
Doesn't mind a goal. So you've gone with Crookie, the intelligent side of things, then, yeah.
Big thank you to Anil for coming in. Big thank you to Alex Crook for staying for the whole show. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone watching, listening, and we will see you next time, hopefully celebrating getting revenge on Spurs.